The garage is too quiet. That's the first thing I notice. It's never quiet in here. There's always the low hum of the radio, the tap-tap of a wrench, the smell of oil and old gasoline. But now, nothing. Just the sound of my own breathing and the hollow echo of an empty space. My eyes go straight to the stain. That perfect dark oil stain on the concrete floor right in the center. It's the ghost of the Boss. My 1969 Mustang Boss 429. For 40 years that car sat right there on that stain. I know every contour of that puddle by heart. I put it there, drop by drop, season by season. Now there's just the stain and the dust. My hands, these old weathered things that have turned more bolts than I can count, curl into fists at my sides. The knuckles are white, the skin like old leather stretched tight over bone. This isn't sadness. This is something hotter, sharper. This is a quiet, simmering fury that starts deep in my gut and radiates out until my jaw aches from clenching it. Cody. His name is a poison in my mind. He didn't just take a car. He took the last piece of my brother, who helped me find it. He took every Sunday afternoon for decades, every scrape and busted knuckle, every moment of peace I ever found under that hood. He reached into my life and stole a chunk of my history. I force myself to take a step forward, then another. The floor feels wrong, too clean. I see a glint of metal over by the old workbench leg. I bend down, my knees protesting with a familiar creak. There it is, a single 10-millimeter socket, lying in the dust. I pick it up. It's cold in my palm. It must have rolled when they were hitching it up. Probably fell from Cody's own toolbox. The irony isn't lost on me. The most common size, the one you always lose. And he left it behind. A calling card. An insult. I close my fingers around it. The metal bites into my skin. This little piece of forged steel feels like the only solid thing left in this hollowed-out building. I look from the socket in my hand to the oil stain on the floor, and then out through the open garage door to the empty driveway. This isn't over. He thinks he's won. He thinks an old man in an empty garage is the end of the story. He's wrong. The title is in that trunk. The bill of sale signed in '72 is with it. My name is on it. My life is in that car. And I'm going to take it all back. I still remember the smell of that old barn in '72, dust, hay, and the sweet, sharp scent of decades-old gasoline. I was just a kid with grease under my nails and a dream in my chest when I saw her, the Boss. A 1969 Mustang Boss 429, sitting under a tarp in Old Man Miller's shed. He was retiring, moving back east. "She needs a patient hand, son," he'd said, handing me the keys. I handed him every dollar I had saved, the bill of sale he signed, and the original Montana title he'd never even registered. I tucked them right into the glove box. They're still in the trunk today. That was my proof, my promise. The real magic didn't start until later, when my boy Cody was big enough to hold a wrench. I'd lift him onto the fender, his little hands next to mine. We'd spend whole Saturdays like that, just us and that engine. I taught him everything. How to listen for a tick in the valve train, how to set the timing just right. "It's about integrity, son," I'd tell him, tapping the block. "You do the job right, even when no one's watching." He'd nod, his eyes wide. Back then, I thought he understood. Fast forward a lifetime. I'm sitting here now in my recliner, The house too quiet. My chest aches. A deep bruised feeling from the surgery. The doctor says I'm lucky. Feels more like I'm fragile. Everything moves slow. The front door opens and there's Cody. My son, in his 40s now. He's got that same smile, but it doesn't reach his eyes like it used to. He's always been restless, my boy. Chasing one scheme after another, looking for the shortcut I never taught him. "Hey, Pop, brought you some soup," he says, setting a bag on the table. He's being kind, but his mind is somewhere else. I see it. His gaze drifts past me, through the kitchen window to the garage. He walks over, pretending to look at the bird feeder, but I know what he's really looking at. On the hook by the door, right next to my jacket, are the keys to the Boss. The old worn key ring with the Ford emblem. They're just hanging there. He stares at them for a long moment. It's a different kind of look than the one he had as a boy. There's no wonder in it now. No patience. It's a calculating look, a hungry one. It's the same look he gets when he's explaining his latest can't-miss idea. He doesn't say a word about the car, just turns back and asks about my medication. But in that silence, I felt a colder draft than the one from the door. I taught him about engines. I just hope somehow a little of that lesson about integrity stuck too. Because right then, watching him look at those keys, I wasn't so sure. My hands were still a little shaky, but the anger burning in my gut was a better fuel than any medicine. I walked out to the garage, the morning sun hitting the empty concrete floor where the Boss should have been. Nothing. Just a faint oil stain and the ghost of her engines rumble in the air. My heart just dropped into my boots. I went back inside, grabbed the kitchen phone, and dialed Cody's number. It rang 5 times before he picked up. "Clint! Hey, buddy, you're up. How you feeling?" "Where's my car, Cody?" There was a pause on the line, just a beat too long. "Your car? Oh, the Mustang, right. Look, don't you worry about a thing. After that whole mess at the bar, I figured it wasn't safe at your place. Moved it for safekeeping." "Safekeeping where?" I asked, my voice tight. "Just a secure spot. A friend's barn. Out of sight, you know." His tone was all slippery, like he was trying to pour oil on water. "You focus on getting better. The car's fine. I want to see it. Tell me where." "Clint, relax. It's all good. I'll bring it by when things cool down. Gotta go." The line went dead. He was lying. I could hear it. That evasive, too casual tone was the same one he used when he was trying to talk me into a bad deal. I slammed the phone down and started pacing. Where would he take it? He wouldn't just hide it. Cody doesn't do anything that doesn't benefit Cody. Frustrated, I yanked open the kitchen drawer where we kept the phone book. Maybe I'd call the sheriff, see if he'd heard anything. As I pulled the bulky book out, a small rectangle of cardstock fluttered to the floor. I bent down and picked it up. It was a business card, crisp and new, wedged between the pages. It was for Big Sky Classics and Pre-Owned Autos over in Billings, a used car lot. On the back, in faint pencil, was scribbled 10 a.m. Tuesday. My blood ran cold. Tuesday. That was today. He wasn't hiding my car. He was selling it. The proof of everything, the title, the bill of sale, was sitting in that trunk. And Cody was about to hand it all to some stranger for a quick payday. The weakness from the hospital was gone, burned away by a cold, clear fury. He'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. This wasn't just a scam anymore. This was theft. And I was done playing the convalescing buddy. It was time to get my car back. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel of my old pickup as I pulled into the lot in Billings. I'd driven 2 hours on a roomer, my stomach in knots the whole way. And then I saw it. There, polished to a mirror shine under the Montana sun, was the Boss, my 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429. The deep blue paint I'd helped my dad wax 100 times, the chrome shaker hood scoop. It was all there. But slapped on the windshield was a bright red sold tag. It felt like a punch to the gut. I killed the engine and just sat for a second trying to breathe. That's when I saw him. The car lot manager, a guy in a too-tight polo shirt, was standing next to my car with another man in a fancy jacket. The manager was patting the Mustang's roof like he'd built it himself. I got out and walked over slowly, my boots crunching on the gravel. I didn't say a word, I just stared at the car. And you are getting a steal, my friend," the manager was saying, his voice slick and loud. "A numbers-matching Boss 429, a legend. And the title?" He leaned in like he was sharing a huge secret. "Clean as a whistle. Just processed it myself. Flipped it from a local trade-in to an out-of-state collector for a very, very tidy profit. Car's heading to California tomorrow." The man in the jacket nodded, looking impressed. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. Clean title? He'd processed it? Every part of me wanted to scream. That car was never Cody's to trade. In its trunk, right now, were the original, never-registered Montana title papers and the bill of sale from 1972, signed by the original owner to my dad, and then to me. My name was on it. My proof was literally sitting in the trunk of the car. He was bragging about selling. But I didn't scream. I didn't say a thing. I just stood there, a few feet away, my eyes locked on the driver's side door, where a small, long-ago scratch from a bicycle handlebar was still barely visible. The manager glanced at me, saw some dusty guy in a work shirt staring, and gave me a dismissive nod before turning back to his client. I let him boast. I let him think he'd won. Because seeing that sold tag on my windshield, hearing him lie through his teeth about a clean title he could never truly have, it did something. It turned the sick panic into something solid, something cold and determined. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. I took a deep breath, the smell of stale coffee and old paper filling the sheriff's office. I was sitting across from an old acquaintance, Sheriff Miller, his badge catching the fluorescent light. I'd just finished laying out the whole mess with Cody and my Mustang. The sheriff leaned back in his creaky chair, his face sympathetic but firm. "Clint, I'm sorry. I know that car is your baby, but from what you're telling me, your brother sold it. That makes it a civil matter between family. My hands are tied." My heart sank. This was the roadblock I'd feared. Then I remembered. The trunk. "Sheriff," I said, leaning forward, "there's something else." The trunk. Cody never popped it open, never even looked inside. The sheriff raised an eyebrow, waiting. "The original, never-registered Montana title is in there," I continued, the words tumbling out. "And the signed bill of sale from old man Fletcher to me, dated 1972. They've been in that spare tire well since the day I bought the Boss. Cody never had them. He couldn't have. He never got the keys from me." I watched his face. The polite, bureaucratic sympathy evaporated. His eyes sharpened, and he sat up straight, the chair groaning in protest. "Say that again," he said, his voice low and serious. The proof that I'm the only legal owner of that vehicle is sitting in its own trunk, Sheriff. Cody sold a car he had no paperwork for. He never transferred anything because he never had anything to transfer. Sheriff Miller was quiet for a long moment, his fingers steepled. He looked from me to the file on his desk and back. "Without those documents presented to the county," he said slowly, each word deliberate, "there is no legal transfer of ownership in the state of Montana. A bill of sale alone, especially from a non-owner, doesn't cut it. The title is the car's birth certificate. If it's still in your name, and the original is in that trunk—" He let the sentence hang. Then he stood up, grabbing his hat from the rack. The entire energy of the room shifted. This was no longer a friendly chat. It was an office with a purpose. "That changes things, Clint. That changes things entirely. If the evidence of the crime is inside the property itself, that moves this out of civil court and onto my desk." He settled the hat on his head. "You sit tight. I'm going to make some calls. We're going to find your car." The investigation had just begun. The phone rang in the kitchen, and I watched the sheriff's face change as he answered. He'd come by the house to update me, saying he had a lead. I stood there, my hand resting on the cold countertop, my heart a dull, heavy drum in my chest. "I see," the sheriff said, his voice low and steady. "And he provided documentation to you at the time of sale?" He listened, nodding, his eyes meeting mine. They were full of a grim understanding I wasn't sure I wanted. "Thank you for your cooperation, sir. We'll be in touch." He hung up and let out a long, slow breath. "That was the new owner, a collector out in California. He's not happy." "I bet he isn't," I muttered, thinking of the man who now had my boss. At least he was driving it, which was more than I could say. "He's furious. Paid a premium for a car with a pristine, clear title. What he got was a mess because the title Cody signed over to him is contested. The cloud is on it now." The sheriff leaned against the doorframe. "When he threatened legal action, the seller folded, gave up Cody's name immediately, provided a copy of the bill of sale Cody used to sell it to him." The words hung in the air. My son's name. My boy. I felt the room tilt slightly. "It's a forgery, Clint. A bad one. The dates are wrong, the notary stamp is fake. It doesn't match the legitimate 1972 bill of sale you have, the one from the original owner to you, which was never even registered. That's the true clean line of ownership, what Cody did." He paused, choosing his words with the care of a man handling live ordnance. "This moves it out of a family dispute. With this new testimony and the fraudulent document, we can treat it as potential fraud, possibly even theft by conversion. It's a crime." He let that settle. The quiet of the house was absolute, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. I saw it all, not the legal terms, but the action. My son, sitting at a table, carefully forging a document to sell something that wasn't his, something that was my heart, parked in a garage. The betrayal was so complete it felt like a physical void. "The decision is yours, Clint," the sheriff said, his voice gentle but firm. "I have what I need to proceed, but I won't do a thing unless you tell me to. You have to decide if you want to press charges against your own son." The trigger, laid right in front of me. It wasn't about the car anymore, not really. It was about the line between being a father and being a man who'd been wronged. The weight of that choice pressed down on me, so immense I could barely breathe. I looked at the sheriff, my ally, and all I could see was the long, lonely road that stretched out from this moment, no matter which direction I chose. All right. So I'm sitting there in the sheriff's office, the smell of old coffee and floor polish hanging in the air. My heart's doing a drum solo against my ribs. This is it. The sheriff is on the phone, and I'm just listening, trying to keep my breathing quiet. "Cody," the sheriff says, his voice all business, no nonsense. He's got the phone on speaker so I can hear every word. "We got a problem. A big one." I can almost see Cody's smug face tightening on the other end of the line. "What kind of problem?" Cody's voice comes through, wary. The sheriff leans forward, resting his elbows on his desk. "That California buyer you sold the Mustang to? He's not happy. He's lawyered up, filing a major fraud lawsuit, and he's naming you personally, Cody. Says you sold him a car you had zero legal right to sell." There's a long silence. I hold my breath. This is the hook. That's ridiculous," Cody sputters, but I can hear the first crack of panic in his voice. "It was a clean sale." "It wasn't," the sheriff says, his tone leaving no room for argument. "The Montana State Police are now involved. They're looking at title fraud, interstate theft, the whole 9 yards. They're talking to me this afternoon. This is about to become a federal headache." Another pause. I can picture Cody sweating, his mind racing, trying to figure out how his easy score turned into this nightmare. "What do you want me to do?" Cody asks, the bravado completely gone now, replaced by a desperate, wheedling tone. The sheriff looks at me, and I give him a single, firm nod. This is the trap, and Cody's walking right into it. "You need to come down here," the sheriff says, calm and authoritative. "To my office. We need to sort this out, get your statement, and see if we can't stop this from blowing up any further before those Montana boys land on your doorstep. Come now." Okay, I'll be there," Cody says, the line going dead a second later. The sheriff hangs up the phone and lets out a long breath. The office is so quiet I can hear the old clock ticking on the wall. "He took the bait," the sheriff says, turning to me. I just nod, my hands clenched into fists on my knees. The trap is set. Cody thinks he's coming here to talk his way out of legal trouble. He has no idea I'm waiting for him, with the real title to my Boss 429 sitting right here in this room. He's walking into a cage of his own making, and for the first time since I saw my empty garage, I feel a surge of something solid. Not quite hope yet, but close. It's the feeling of the ground finally being under my feet again. The air in the sheriff's office was cool, almost cold, but Cody was sweating. I could see the damp patches spreading under the arms of his shirt as he leaned forward, his voice a frantic, oily stream. "See, Sheriff, it's all a big misunderstanding," he said, his eyes darting between the lawman and me. "Clint here, he gave me permission. Verbal agreement. Said he needed the cash for medical bills and I was doing him a favor by finding a buyer. Handshake deal." I didn't say a word. I just stood there, my back straight, listening to the lies weave and tangle. The sheriff, my old ally behind the desk, was a statue of calm, his fingers steepled. He let Cody talk himself into a corner. When Cody finally paused, breathless, the sheriff turned his steady gaze to me. "Clint, you have anything to add?" That was my cue. I didn't look at Cody. I reached into the inner pocket of my jacket, the movement slow and deliberate. I pulled out a single sheet of paper, crisp and official, and laid it on the sheriff's desk without a word. The sheriff picked it up, his eyes scanning. "This is a notarized affidavit from a Dr. Raymond Shaw," he stated, his voice filling the quiet room. "It details Mr. Clint's hospitalization dates. A 12-day stay for emergency spinal surgery." He looked up at Cody. "Those dates match the exact window you claimed he handed you the keys and signed a bill of sale." Cody's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The sheriff wasn't done. He opened a folder. "Then we have the matter of the California buyer, a Mr. Alvarez. He's been fully cooperative since we reached out. Once he understood the vehicle was under investigation for title fraud, he immediately agreed to return the Boss. It's already on a transporter headed back this way." He laid out photocopies on the desk. The fake title Cody had forged, the real, never-registered Montana title from the trunk. The 1972 bill of sale signed to me next to the one Cody had backdated and scribbled on. "The evidence of fraud is pretty clear, Cody," the sheriff said, his voice now like granite. "You exploited a man's medical crisis. You forged documents. You attempted to sell a vehicle you had no legal claim to." Cody's face, once so smug and confident, completely crumbled. The color drained away, leaving a sickly gray pallor. His shoulders slumped, as if the strings had been cut. He looked from the damning papers to the sheriff's impassive face, to my silent, unwavering stare. There were no more lies left. In the cold, fluorescent light of that official setting, his entire story just dissolved into nothing, leaving only the shaky, guilty man he really was. The silence in the sheriff's office was so thick I could feel it pressing against my eardrums. Cody wouldn't look at me. He'd been staring at the scuffed linoleum floor for 10 minutes while the sheriff just leaned against his desk, arms crossed, letting the weight of it all settle. The sheriff had laid it out plain. Grand theft auto, forgery, fraud, felony charges one after the other, stacking up like bricks. He'd placed the folder on the desk between us, open. Inside were the papers from the trunk of the Boss. The original crisp Montana title, never registered anywhere else. And beneath it, the bill of sale from 1972, signed by Old Man Henderson to me, the ink faded, but the promise in it permanent. "You want to tell me your side of it now, Cody?" the sheriff asked, his voice calm. "Before I call the DA?" I saw Cody's shoulders begin to shake. It wasn't an act. It was the full, ugly collapse of a house built on lies. A choked sob broke out of him, and he finally looked up, his eyes red and desperate, skipping over me to plead with the sheriff. "I knew," he whispered, the words tearing out of him. "I knew the real papers were in the trunk. I'd seen them years ago. I thought no one would ever check. Who looks in the trunk of a car that's been sitting that long?" He dragged a hand over his face. "I forged the bill of sale. Made it look like Dad sold it to me before he passed. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The apology hung in the air, but it wasn't for me. It was for getting caught. To avoid prosecution, he agreed to everything. The sheriff had a new bill of sale ready, a quitclaim. Cody signed it with a trembling hand, transferring any claim to the Boss back to me. He also agreed to repay every cent to that buyer from California, a financial hole it would take him years to climb out of. As he scrawled his signature, I just watched. The anger I'd carried for weeks, hot and sharp, was gone. In its place was something colder and heavier: disappointment. This wasn't a stranger. This was the kid I'd fished with, the one I'd helped teach to change a tire on this very car. The betrayal wasn't just legal, it was familial. It was the realization that some bonds are thinner than paper and some signatures are worth less than dust. When it was done, Cody left without another word, the door clicking shut softly behind him. The sheriff gathered the papers, sliding the real ones back to me. "It's done, Clint. She's legally yours. Again." I took the documents, the old title feeling right in my hand. "Yeah," I said, my voice rough. "Thanks, Sheriff." But as I walked out to where the boss sat waiting in the late afternoon sun, I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt tired. The victory was complete, the car was mine, but the cost of it sat in my gut like a stone. Some wins don't feel like winning, they just feel like an ending. The smell of fresh wax and old gasoline filled my garage, the only kind of perfume I've ever cared about. Weeks had passed, and the boss was finally back where it belonged, its deep blue paint drinking in the soft light. I ran the buffing cloth over the driver's side fender in slow, careful circles, feeling the perfect, cool curve of the metal beneath my palm. This was the ritual. This was peace. I heard the familiar crunch of gravel outside, not the aggressive spit of Cody's truck, but the steady roll of a county cruiser. The sheriff's silhouette filled the open garage door, but he wasn't wearing his official business face. He held 2 steaming paper cups. "Figured you might be thirsty," he said, offering one to me. I took the coffee with a nod, the simple gesture saying more than any speech could. He leaned against the workbench, looking at the car. He didn't say Cody's name. He didn't have to. The law was satisfied. The paperwork in the trunk, the original Montana title, the '72 bill of sale with my name signed in clean, clear ink, had done all the talking that needed doing. The car was home. That was the verdict. We stood there in a comfortable quiet, the only sounds the distant call of a meadowlark and the gentle tap-tap of my cooling coffee cup against the bench. It was a different silence than the one that had haunted this garage for weeks. That silence had been empty, accusing. This one was full. It was the sound of a machine at rest, of a story finished, of a friend sharing a moment without needing to fill it with noise. The sheriff finished his coffee, crushed the cup, and tossed it into the can by the door. "She looks good, Clint." "She's home," I said, and that was the whole truth of it. He gave me a final solid nod and left as quietly as he'd come. I turned back to the Mustang, my hand resting on its roof. The late afternoon sun stretched long across the concrete floor. Some things you fix. Some things, like trust or a broken man's nature, you just can't. You learn the difference. The machine, at least, is honest. You give it care. It gives you back a purr. You respect its history, and it carries you forward. I knew I'd take the boss out on the old highway soon, let it run clean and free. But for now, just standing here in this peaceful garage with the proof of what was mine resting solidly on 4 tires was enough.